The last thing I remember before I died was the smell of burning metal and a silence so complete it felt like the universe had taken a breath and held it. I was 31 years old, standing inside one of the most advanced research facilities in the country, and in less than 3 seconds, I was gone. Not unconscious, gone. What happened during those 18 minutes on the other side didn't just change my life. It dismantled every single thing I thought I knew about reality. My name is Daniel Harmon. I'm a particle physicist from Geneva, Illinois. Before March of this year, I had spent the better part of a decade working inside a federal research laboratory about 40 miles outside of Chicago. I had 2 degrees framed on my wall, a drawer full of published papers, and exactly 0 belief in anything I couldn't measure. I was the kind of man who corrected people at dinner parties, the kind of man who privately rolled his eyes at faith. I was convinced that the universe was a beautiful, indifferent machine, and that any talk of a creator was simply poetry for people who hadn't studied enough physics. I was 31 years old, and I thought I had already figured out the most important questions. I was wrong about everything. Life before March 6th was ordinary, in the way that only becomes precious after it's gone. I drove the same highway to work every morning, drank the same terrible coffee from the same cracked mug, and spent my days chasing data that most people couldn't begin to understand. I wasn't unhappy. I was just sealed, closed off from something I didn't know existed. My colleague Marcus had been asking me for weeks to join his church's weekend discussion group. Every Friday, he'd lean over our shared workstation and say, "Just come once, Daniel. What are you afraid of?" And every Friday I'd laugh it off and say I had better things to do with my Saturday mornings. I think about that now. I think about it constantly. The night before the accident, I stayed late running diagnostics on a high-energy calibration sequence. The numbers weren't settling the way I expected them to. Something in the equipment was off, but I was too tired and too impatient to flag it properly. I sent a short message to Marcus saying I'd look at it again in the morning, gathered my coat, and drove home through a light rain. I should have flagged it. The next morning, March 6th, I was back at the terminal by 7. The calibration had drifted further overnight. I reached behind the main panel to manually reset the junction relay, something I had done dozens of times, and the surge hit me before I could process what was happening. A massive electrical discharge, direct contact, straight through my left arm and across my chest. My body hit the floor before my mind caught up, and then I was somewhere else. There was no tunnel, no floating above the room. One moment I was falling, and the next I was standing in a place that had no edges. The ground beneath me felt like walking on the surface of still water that never broke. The light around me wasn't coming from any direction, it was simply there, the way oxygen is there. It was the most natural thing I had ever experienced, and it was more foreign to me than anything I had ever encountered in science. And then I wasn't alone. He didn't appear. That's the only way I can describe it. He was simply present. The way gravity is present, you don't see it arrive, you only feel what it does to you. I cannot tell you what color his eyes were, because the concept of color breaks down in his presence. I can tell you that when he looked at me, I felt every version of myself, every careless word, every moment of arrogance. Every time I dismissed something true because it couldn't fit into my equations, I felt all of it rise to the surface at once, and there was no condemnation in his gaze, only recognition. He knew me. He had always known me, and that was the most undoing thing of all. "Daniel," he said, not with a voice the way we use voices, but with a knowing that settled through me like warmth through cold stone. You have spent your life measuring the walls of my house and calling it discovery. You found the laws. You never asked the lawgiver. I had no defense. I just wept. He showed me things then. Not like a vision on a screen, more like remembering something you have always known but were never allowed to access. I saw America stretched out below me, not as geography but as something alive, something breathing, and what I saw frightened me deeply. Certain regions were darkening, not from weather, not from chance, from consequence, from the accumulated weight of choices made by a society that had quietly decided it no longer needed any foundation beyond its own comfort. He showed me the specific corridors, the coastlines, the corridors between major cities, the power infrastructure, the fault lines, both geological and spiritual, and he said, "What is coming is not punishment. It is the natural result of a structure built without a cornerstone. A wall does not fall because it is hated. It falls because something essential was removed." He told me the window of movement was not infinite. He told me the people who needed to hear this had very little time left to act on it. He told me to go back and say it plainly. "Not everyone will listen," he said, "but some will, and some is enough." I came back gasping, literally gasping, like a man pulled from deep water. Marcus was kneeling beside me on the lab floor. He told me later that I had no pulse for 18 minutes. The emergency team that arrived was already preparing to call it. One of the paramedics, a woman named Teresa, told my mother she had never seen anything like what happened when I came back. She said my vitals returned all at once, not gradually, like a machine being switched on. I sat up and said one sentence before I passed out again. I said, "He sent me back. I have not returned to the lab. I don't think I will." Not because science became meaningless to me, it didn't, but because I now understand what it is and what it is not. It is the how. It was never meant to carry the why. Marcus and I talk every day now. He cried when I told him the full story. He said, "I've been praying for you for 3 years. 3 years. I didn't even know, if you are watching this. And something in you is unsettled, not afraid, just unsettled. I want you to take that seriously. Don't explain it away. Don't rationalize it into silence. That unsettled feeling is not anxiety. It is not stress. It is the part of you that already knows what your mind is still arguing about. He is real. The foundation is real. And the time to find higher ground in every sense of those words is right now. My name is Daniel Harmon. I was a man who measured shadows and called it light. I know the difference now. Please don't wait until you do too.